You know what? I was going to do this whole fake rage thing, but we've now started and tried to record this video 4 times?
4 times.
4 times. We've actually done the first one, which ran to an hour and 15 minutes, and then we couldn't get the information off the phone, and then we tried it again with another camera, and then that wouldn't work, and then this happened. So we're just going to start talking about 2017's It Spoilers! Which is the first time in the 4 videos that I've actually said that.
Yeah.
Afternoon, everybody. Silverbolt here. With me is as of yet unnamed YouTuber.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard, because she came to see it with me, and I said, "Do you want to be in the video?" And then she decided, "Yes, we'll be in the video. But you know what? We're going to do it right. So you're going to be properly framed and properly lit. We've got a timer going. I've got a script. Well, not a script, but a bullet points."
This is what happens when you ask a media graduate to help you. Particularly a media graduate in, film, documentary film. So this is a slightly different kind of vibe or Silverbolt video going on right now.
Yeah.
But I actually organised and planned one. There's like
What's the fun in that?
It's sort of an extemporaneous one.
Ooh, nice word.
It is a good word.
It is a good word.
It's a very good word.
It is a good word, actually. But yes, I was going to do a whole planned rage, fake out thing just to make you all think that I was going to rant and rage and scream at this movie. Sorry, Jamie. But no, I really enjoyed it. So without further ado, because I'm conscious of the time, and how much she's going to have to edit all of this afterwards, let's go into it. I suppose we'll start with, having a preface to what the actual film is for those of you who've been living under a rock for the last several weeks. It is about 7 children who come together to fight an evil clown, shape-shifting, killy, thingy-me-bobby.
It's the monster that takes the shape of a clown.
It's the monster that takes the shape of a clown. Based off the Stephen King 1,100 and something word novel of the same name from 1985.
Word or page?
Sorry, page.
It's like it's a very short novel.
That's not a novel, that's a text message.
It's a very short novel.
Yeah, page novel of the same name from 1985 and redone for a theatrical release, which the film has not had before. The 1990 version is a TV 2-part / 4-part miniseries. It's not a movie. So there we go. I suppose on to the characters first, and I suppose the general one to start with would be the Losers Club, the 7 children who fight Pennywise. On the whole, I quite liked them. I thought they were very well done, and I think that Andrew Muschietti did a very good job as a director of directing children, because they act like children. Stephen King's It is my favourite book of all time. I know it inside and out. So I was always going to be probably overly critical where this film was concerned. But he does not write children very well. Stephen King writes children very, very badly. Kind of like his villains, they're always one-dimensional. But there we go, we'll get to that. So if you look at his books, like It, like The Shining, like The Langoliers, like Needful Things, they're small adults. They're adults who end up in a child's situation and get out of it again. He doesn't write children very well. In this film, they acted like children, particularly the likes of Richie and Eddie and to a certain degree Stan, but we'll get to Stan in a bit. They acted like children.
Very natural performances.
Yes.
Because you know how sometimes kids, when you see them in films, they're doing the actoring thing where they're like, I am on screen, therefore I have to act, whereas these kids, they were a much more natural performances. Still, child actors will always be child actors, they will always do a bit of actoring, but
yes.
I thought in this one they were quite natural
I
performances.
thought Bill was the worst for the actoring.
Yeah, he was a bit wooden at times, but I mean he's like a 14-year-old child,
yeah,
so I mean,
you can't really compare him. So
yeah, I remember what I was like when I was in youth theatre when I was 14. I was no better.
There's pictures on the internet.
Actually, there isn't.
Good job, really.
This was the time before internet.
Well, in Claire, anyway.
Yeah, indeed.
So Bill, he can come across as a bit wooden at times, but Richie, who was in Stranger Things, which I still haven't seen, but there we go.
Don't bother.
Don't bother? Okay, fair enough. I have to say he was my favourite, and he embodied quite an awful lot of the what the fuck that this kind of situation would naturally cause. You know, these are 7 children facing a supernatural / extraterrestrial. I never liked that twist. Yeah, in the books it's an alien.
Same with Watchmen.
Oh no, it's an extraplanar interdimensional, tiny, whiny, wibbly wobbly.
I think they do that, and this is a complete tangent. It might get edited out, but in Watchmen as well, in the novel, it's an alien at the end.
Oh right.
But
okay.
in the film, they make it not an alien because, you know, it's a bit of a done trope at this point, isn't it? You know?
But yeah, it's something that Stephen King tends to do is. I think he's a bit like Dan Abnett in this regard, is that he tends to write huge amounts of build-up, realise he's written himself into a fucking corner, and then just pull something batshit insane out of his ass, and there we go. But there we go. Where were we? Yeah, the children. They have very childlike reactions to a situation that no adult can understand, use, or foresee. So overall they're very well done. Individually, I think Mike is very underdeveloped.
Also Stan.
And Stan, on the one hand, he has the most childlike of fears. He's afraid of a creepy picture. Perfectly childlike fear. To Eddie's hypochondria brought on by his mother, which is a whole load of deep-rooted psychological issues in itself. But you know, it's a bit more of what you just imagine an adult fear would be. Whereas Stan's is very, very childlike. Mike's fear, perfectly fucking understandable. Burning building. You know,
Richie doesn't like clowns.
Richie doesn't like clowns.
Which is quite a childlike thing.
Which is quite a childlike thing, and Richie is the only one who doesn't see anything until them as a group, which is the same in the book. Richie doesn't see anything apart from what could have been a dream or might not have been a dream sequence. Richie doesn't see anything until he's with Bill. So,
but going back to Stan, I don't know if I mentioned this already. I may have done, but I've never actually read the book. I've only seen the miniseries that was released in 1990, and so for me, all of my referring is going to be more so to that because I saw that like 2 months ago.
Yes,
the first time.
The first time.
But in this film, Stan has a vision of the monster, and then goes on to his mates about, oh, it's not real, it doesn't, it defies belief, I can't be real. Whereas in the miniseries, he's like, oh, I can't be real, and then he has a vision of the monster, which terrifies him so much that as an adult he'd rather kill himself than come back to where he grew up. So it like in this film it didn't make sense that he would see the monster and then doubt it rather than doubting the monster and then seeing it.
Stan's no scene in the park at the 4th of July celebrations, is that before or after the projector scene?
That's before.
So we have only had the... My camera's going to pick up that noise.
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Stan sees the monster and he's like the second of the losers, movie pacing to do it. And then there's nothing about, no, it's not real, but like when Bill says, I've seen this, and then Eddie says, the clown, and then Ben says, the clown, Stan doesn't say anything, he just nods that he's seen something, and then we get this July the 4th celebration, and he's going, no, it's not real, none of this is real, it's not happening. He's like, what the fuck, dude? Talk about a 180 to character turn.
Yeah.
If you're going to be the skeptic from the very beginning, and the way you make him naturally a skeptic and not just trying to psychologically avoid what's going on is not have him see something until towards the end.
I think it's
like they do in the book and the miniseries.
I think it was a bit of a slip up also
yeah.
the timelining rather than anything else, you know. It may have just been an error.
Yeah.
But it makes the character make less sense. There is a bit of a spare part in this film anyway.
Himself and Mike.
Yeah, Mike as well is a bit of a spare part. I think in the miniseries they have a greater presence. But yeah, Stan and Mike in this one. Mike essentially kind of turns out to be the token black dude, in my opinion. That's sort of the only reason. And I know that's a bit insensitive, but like, that's essentially why he's in this film.
Because in the miniseries and in the book, Stan is the voice of realism. I suppose you call him the character that people can relate to in some regards.
Yeah, well, he's just sort of
he's the doubter,
yeah.
and Mike is the historian. Stan's role as the doubter is thrown completely out by the fact that he knows 100% this thing is real because it's tried to kill him. He's admitted it and then he denies it, and Mike's role is thrown out of the window of the historian by giving it to Ben. Now,
Ben has a much bigger role.
Ben has a much bigger role because they don't build the dam. And in the miniseries, they build the dam, and Ben shows them how to build the dam because Ben's the architect.
They can't have the building of the dam because the motivation for this film is completely different, isn't it? Because they go to find Georgie.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so that's why they don't have the building of the dam.
Yeah.
Because they're not just foostering around as kids; they've actually got a mission.
Yes.
Bill's mission.
Yeah, which was a very childlike thing to want to do.
A nice change from the miniseries.
And the book. It's one of the changes I agreed with.
Yeah. So like in this adaptation, Bill, he doesn't believe that his brother has been killed. He doesn't believe he's dead. So he goes to find him and bring him back, as opposed to in the miniseries where he knows he's dead because there was a body. They had a funeral. They buried him. Whereas in this film, there is no body because he's dragged away by Pennywise. So it's slightly different. I thought it was a better.
I will admit, I think it made it much more childlike, a realistic childlike thing to do. Who doesn't believe that his brother is dead and has no concept of the complexities of a missing child case in 2017 in the 1980s in 2017. It's still horrendously complicated to try and find a missing child, but a boy who's lost his brother, he doesn't see police reports, interrogations, he doesn't see tracking sniffer dogs, last known whereabouts, GPS, all this. He doesn't see anything like that. He just goes, I've got a quest to go find my brother. And it's a very believable, childlike response to the fact that his brother has gone missing.
In denial.
It is denial. He's up the river in Egypt without a boat. But it's a very childlike attitude. Ben's role as historian, I quite liked it. It made sense that this bookish, intelligent boy who's just moved to the city is, how many people live in famous cities? How many people live in New York, in Birmingham, in Athens, in Limerick?
Well, Limerick, a famous city there, to be fair.
It's got a rhyme named after it. How many people go to the tourist attractions? You've lived in Limerick for 12 years. You've never been to the big castle.
No. I've never
so it's natural enough that a new person moving into town would research the town, and he finds out about the history. So that's a logical, progressive segue, but it does make Mike kind of redundant.
Yeah, because his role has been completely taken off him and given to a different character. So, maybe he'll become more of a thing as an adult in the second part.
It has been hinted from the research that I've done that Mike is going to be much more integral. Which makes sense. He's the one that brings them all back. The only character we haven't touched upon, and I'll let you take the lead on this one, is Beverly.
Yes, Beverly. Beverly.
We both had issues with this one.
In the miniseries, Beverly's sort of like a very shy, mousy kind of girl because she's being smacked around by her dad, and that's believable to me that someone who is being abused would be shy, uncertain of themselves. Whereas in this film, it was very, very hand-fisted, I thought, because when you're first introduced to Beverly, she's got long hair, she's been bullied by all the people in school. You see that where they tip a load of basically shite out of a bin on top of her while she's in a cubicle. She's been bullied by the kids. She goes home and it's revealed that her dad, it's strongly hinted that her dad is sexually abusing her. And so then she goes off and her dad makes an advance on her and she's upset about it, so she goes and cuts off all of her hair, which makes sense because he's fondling her hair and it's all like, oh, your hair is lovely and stuff, so she cuts it all off. And then she's this badass superstar who's like super self-confident and like stripping down her knickers in front of the boys in the Losers Club and throwing herself into a quarry, to go basically essentially what is PG friendly skinny dipping. It doesn't make any sense. And then to add insult to injury, we've had this turnaround. She becomes this badass. She she murders her own dad by braining him with the top of her sister and like the ceramic part of her sister, and then she gets kidnapped by Pennywise, and she has to go be saved like a damsel in distress. Makes no sense, not at all. Because like, first of all, the thing that upsets me is that, you know, little girl being sexually abused by her single dad, there's no mother in the situation. She wouldn't, under any circumstances, from my experience of working with children, be in any way self-confident, self-assured, wanting to, you know, go out and be all bubbly and sociable. No amount of cutting one's own hair off is going to fix abuse. That's not going to happen. And also the turnaround to have her have this sort of revolution of self-discovery at 13, which is also a bit weird, to then have to be saved by the boys in the Losers Club as a damsel in distress at the end.
Yeah.
It hurt my feelings. It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, you've got this somewhat of a Mary Sue character in the form of Bev, who is very much following on with the trend of strong independent female characters. And strong independent female characters are all well and good. That's absolutely fine. But you have to make it believable. And somebody who is being abused at home and then abused in the greater community for being sexually promiscuous. This is a girl who is being sexually promiscuous, who is accused of being sexually promiscuous in the community at large, and is quite likely being sexually abused by her father at home, is not going to be this outgoing, strong character who very much is almost like the linchpin for holding the Losers together. You know, she's the one that's all standing next to Bill because she's got the hots for him, and you know, she's the one that's all ready to stand next to Bill and fight this thing and realises that they're strongest together. It doesn't work when you've got somebody who is so psychologically fragile because she's a child. I'm not saying it's because she's a girl or because she's the female character, but children can get damaged. And when you've got that systemic cycle of abuse, outside and inside, you are not going to be a strong, independent character who don't need no man.
No, well, she does need a man in this case.
And then it gets flipped around that she's the one that needs to be saved. You know, why didn't it take Stan? Stan would have been a much more logical choice to grab because he is the weakest link of the group.
I understand there's no kidnapping in the book.
No, it never grabs any of them.
No, they don't. They just go down to the sewer and beat the shit out of him, essentially. But in this one, I think the filmmaker obviously wanted a reason for them to have to go into the sewers for this like last hurrah. So he decided that one of the children was going to be kidnapped. But yeah, as Silverboss says, Stan would have made more sense. Or even if you want to use one of your main characters, because as we've discussed, Stan is kind of useless. If you want to use one of your main characters, take Eddie.
Yeah.
So Eddie would have made more sense than Beverly, because for the whole film she's been this like second in command to Bill, going wherever Bill may go, encouraging everyone to stay together and be strong, and then all of a sudden she ends up being rescued. So to me it doesn't make any sense. Speaking of character turnarounds though, believable character turnarounds, I thought Eddie was quite a good character.
Eddie was a great character, yeah.
There's that scene as well where there's a scene where he goes into the pharmacy and he's told by a girl in the pharmacy that his medicines are placebos. And he gets really upset, and he goes home to his mum, and his mum he's readying himself to go out and help the Losers for the last time, and his mum's like, no, you can't do this. And he throws his medicine down in front of her and goes, these medicines are bullshit, they're gazebos!
That was a very good
it's
scene.
It's so funny! They're gazebos! It was very good.
It was very good.
He has this turnaround of, he's this shy little boy, and then he has the one thing that kind of breaks him away from his mother eventually.
Which is the truth in the book.
Yeah, which
well.
makes sense to me. So, like, you know, I thought he had a believable character turnaround. The rest of them, they're just fairly standard linear characters.
I mean, all the Eddie's relationship with his mother and a lot of the Losers' childlike losers will be added to in the second film because, to my knowledge, they're still filming the second part before the child actors are too old to play them. So we'll probably see an awful lot more done with the adults, and I can see it being a two-parter. Now, to be
We're
fair,
going to wait 2 years for the next one as well.
We've got to wait till 2019 for the next one. But if they're going to fit in as much as adults as they did with children and still have backstories and flashbacks, I can see it either being a 3-hour movie or a two-parter. So, but we'll see. Your point on Beverly being dragged in the sewers to give the losers a reason to go into the sewers, probably brings us on to the last remaining character, aside from the penultimate, which we'll get to, in the form of Henry Bowers.
Oh god, utterly useless character.
Redundant.
Completely useless.
Because your thoughts on him were quite strong.
In the miniseries, again, having not read the book, he's, when you first meet him, he's this typical kind of playground bully. You know, he's like giving boys wedgies or what have you, and you know, he's just a nasty little boy, but he's not in any ways kind of evil or twisted. And it's only as Pennywise kind of works his evil brain magic on Henry that he starts to get odd and kind of sick. And you know, when Ben won't let him copy his test, he tries to hunt him down, and like he's getting a knife and he's going to carve his initials into Ben's stomach, which is kind of weird. That's for a little boy to want to do that to another little boy is kind of mental, but he's probably kind of being affected. Whereas in this film, when you first meet him...
That's the book reference, by the way.
Yeah, you were saying that before.
Yeah.
But like, which isn't explained very well in the miniseries, has to be said, but like in this one, he's just mentally ill from the first time you meet him. He's kind of... It's not explained why he has it in for Ben, for starters. He kind of chases Ben around, threatens him with a knife, and starts cutting his initials into him. But it's never explained why he's doing that. And it's like a sick, weird, twisted thing for a little boy to want to do to another little boy, and it made him an unbelievable character, in my opinion.
He's too vicious.
He's too vicious.
From the outset.
If
it escalated, then understandable. But from the outset, he's just psychotic.
Yeah, he's psychotic, and then you have the scene where he's belittled by his father in front of his mateys, in front of his crew, and then he gets a new knife from Pennywise because he had lost his knife earlier in the confrontation with Ben, and so he gets a new knife and he uses it to murder his dad, which I'm assuming that does happen in the book.
Yes, it does happen in the book. But I'll get to that when you finish.
Differently. And then he turns into this crazy psycho man, and he chases the Losers Club into the sewers. He and Mike have this big fight, and then Mike pushes him away, and Henry falls down the well, and you never see him again. He's gone. That's the last you ever see him in the film. So here was me thinking, oh, he's gone down the well. The losers are going to bump into him at some point in the sewer. They're going to have this big confrontation where they beat him up or something like that. But no, he just falls down the well, and that's it.
Yeah.
He's this utterly pointless character. He has like his own story isn't explained. He's just sort of there to be this evil boy, and without him, Mike wouldn't have joined the Losers Club, which is fair enough.
Or Ben. But you could have written around that.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't need Henry in there, and then he has the tall Keanu Reeves looking boy with him, who gets stolen by, or who gets kidnapped as well. So there's a few things in there, but like I think Henry was a superfluous.
Yeah, and they made him a superfluous character. And let's face it, we all know why Henry Bowers is in the film, because if he was left out, all of the Stephen King fanboys would be up in frigging arms about it.
Yeah.
Kind of like I probably would have been if he hadn't been in there, to be fair. I'm kind of having a very first world problem with Henry, because I admit that he's written in superfluously, but if he hadn't been in there, I'd be like, yeah. But Henry Bowers in
You'd
the
be
book,
like, what? You'd be like,
yeah. In the book, what I was saying earlier about Stephen King writing very one-dimensional characters, and he's very bad for writing one-dimensional villains. Ace Merrill would be another one-dimensional villain in Stephen King, but Henry Bowers in the book comes from an abused background. His father runs a farm and he's not a guard.
he's a policeman.
He's a policeman in this one, which was surprising. He runs, he's from, and his father is constantly pumping him full of this. That sounded wrong. Pumping him full of this litany of hatred, particularly towards black people.
Yeah.
So this litany of absolute hatred, and it just twists Henry. And then and Henry's a very violent character anyway. But over the course of the summer, it works in his head, and eventually he gets this new knife sent to him in the post. His sanity snaps, and he kills his old man, which does happen in the book. He kills it, but in this one, Henry is obviously the town bully. He's the one that all the kids know. So if all the kids know him and are afraid of him, it's understandable that the adults would also know him. So his father would probably have a very good understanding of exactly what his son is like, which goes to explaining that whole firing a pistol 3 inches from his feet. That's not abusive. Goes to show you. I did like the line,
you want to watch a paper man.
You want to match a paper man crumble, give him a little fear.
Yeah.
So he's probably, utterly exasperated. But then his father goes and gets killed by his son. It's just. Yeah, it's quite clear the writers focused heavily on making the losers very believable. But in doing so, they made Henry not so believable. He's too vicious with no reason why he's so vicious. I mean, there's no reason, as you were saying, there's no reason given why Henry's after Ben. But what on earth is reason enough that Henry then decides to carve his name into his stomach? I mean, it's just an unsurpassed level of violence that you wouldn't see in any normal kid. And if he has got some form of psychotic, mental, I want to kill the whole world's illness, why isn't that explained? Why isn't that referenced? Why is he just this evil kid who's evil for the sake of being evil because it's a Stephen King film, we need a evil human character? Breathe.
But one thing I will say about Henry, though, he's got an amazing mullet.
He had an amazing mullet. and that Richie's line of that mullet-wearing arsehole was fucking brilliant!
But, I mean, again, I thought he was quite nicely retimed, if that's the phrase. Like in the original miniseries, he's got his leather jacket and his white vest and his little kiss curly. He's like a bad kid. But in this one, he's got like a mullet and he sort of looks
sleeveless t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I did quite like, which is kind of going off tangent, is that how they 80s-ified everything instead of 50s-ified everything, which is kind of cool. But we can get to that.
Yeah, well, we might as well reference it now, otherwise we'll probably forget. But the changing of the setting from the 1950s to the 1980s. Doing something in the 1950s, I suppose at this point would be pretty much a period piece. And so changing it to the 80s, from a filming point of view, it makes a bit more sense. I mean, it's not good. The purists aren't going to be happy, but personally, I can live with it.
Yeah, but also as well, I imagine in the book, but in the miniseries, they were it was nowadays and 30 odd years ago, which when the film was made was 1980s and 1950s, which is again in the book. But for making the film nowadays, if you want it to be nowadays and 30 years ago, it has to be 1980s. Otherwise, the nowadays bit will be in the 1980s, which means the whole thing will be set in the past rather than it being set in the present and the past.
Yes.
So, but I thought the kind of the design of the 1980s kind of vibe, I thought it was very tastefully done because it wasn't like in your face 1980s. It just happened to be that was the setting. The film.
New Kids on the Block.
Oh yeah. But the film could have taken place in any decade. It was just an incidental setting. It wasn't because I find nowadays when things are set in the 80s or the 70s, they're aggressively in your face about it. It's oh, look at how 80s this is. Look at all the 80s things we're referencing, and it's very self-aware. Whereas this, I thought it was nicely kind of a setting more so than a focus.
Yeah.
Which is rare for period stuff at the moment.
The setting itself, it didn't bother me, and I thought overall it worked. It worked, the setting in the 1980s, and we'll see what it's going to be like. It's going to be a lot easier to shoot in 2017, which means because if you've had to shoot in 1950s and 1980s, you've got to have a budget for stuff that's in the 1950s. You've got to have a budget for the 1980s. Yeah. Whereas if you're doing it in the 80s and the 2000s teens, then you don't need a budget for props as much.
But one thing,
or time accurate props.
Again, someone who hasn't read the book, Silverbolt alerted me to the fact that there is a socio-economic kind of thing at play within the Losers Club. That's, some of them are rural, some of them are poor, some of them aren't as poor. In this, that really wasn't obvious. Now, again, if that isn't important to the narrative, then it doesn't need to be there. But with the design, I didn't get the feeling that anyone was any worse off than anybody else. You got the impression that they're all kind of lower middle class, rural Americans, but you didn't get any kind of idea of there being, even within the Losers Club, any kind of socioeconomic divides.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the reason they're called the Losers is because each one has a very physical or socio-economic affliction. Like Bill has a stutter, Eddie has asthma, Richie wears glasses and can't shut up, Stan's a Jew, which in the 1950s was bad.
and Mike was black, which
Mike
in the
was black
1950s
in
was
the
bad.
1950s was bad. Ben was fat and Beverly was poor. So the three ones that really wouldn't translate well was Stan being a Jew, so now he just ends up tagging along with Bill and Eddie and Richie. Mike being black, I mean obviously race relations do happen, not saying they don't, but it's certainly not.
50s
In the 50s it would have been worse.
Yeah.